Hi, friends. This is Adam Shoemaker, Rector at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in downtown Charleston, back for another edition of Rector's Corner. And I'm very happy to have with me today Lee Pringle, who is the founder and artistic director of the Color of Music Festival that kicks off this week in Charleston. Lee, thank you very much for making the time to have this conversation. We're going to talk about the festival, what's going on this year. But before we do that, I'd love if you could just share a little bit about your background and what you did before you started this festival.
Well, thank you, Rector Shoemaker, for inviting me. And as we were talking, what we would consider green room talk before this interview started, we were reflecting on the fact that you were involved with the Color of Music and supporting us at your wonderful campus now for 9 years. And we certainly have some great memories there, as well as my Charleston Spiritual Ensemble, as I was sharing with you, that did several concerts there at St. Stephen's. My background is one that starts with being born and raised here in South Carolina. I was born in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, raised in an outside rural area that's called Pringletown. It's near where the Volvo North American plant is. And like most children of the 70s, being born in 1964, I was very lucky to benefit from all the advancements and all the, rice paddies that my parents and their generation pushed down for me to have a free mind to dream and do things that they couldn't even consider during the Jim Crow era. And as a result, I spent a lot of time being raised there with my father's mother, who lived closest to me. And when my parents would do couples dates and so forth, my brother and I would be dropped off at my grandmother's house. And I can remember her watching, all these 50s and 60s shows, Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Big Valley. And for some reason, the soundtracks, which during that time they didn't go straight into an advertisement. You went to the Roman numerals at the end of the show, so you literally heard what these composers conceived for these big shows. And I was always fascinated with the music at the end. So I kind of grew up having this interest in classical music and strings and things of that nature. And it really didn't manifest itself until I was exposed to high school marching band and basic music in Berkeley County. Was taught music by a woman by the name of Mildred Gilmore Brevard, who was well known in the area. She was a contemporary of Lionel Hamilton, Lonnie Hamilton, rather,
Oh,
who
Lonnie.
most folks know as a very famous Jenkins Orphanage alum, and Mr. Hamilton, was a band director. He was a musician, professional musician. So Mildred Brevard just inspired, a bunch of young Black kids who were in a Title I school. All of us were poor, getting free lunch and all the things that come with being raised in a rural setting where there's not a lot of industry and so forth. And so fast forward to me enlisting in the U.S. Navy, going to college, eventually coming back to South Carolina and being asked to join the Charleston Symphony Chorus, which was called the Charleston Singers Guild back then. And that opened a door that I had never really been exposed to, and that was orchestral music live and singing what we refer to in this area as the Western European canon.
Mhm.
So I was exposed, immersed in it for quite a while, sang in the symphony chorus almost a decade, and then the Charleston's men's chorus for a while. And it was at the time when I was then in corporate America that the someone who was on the board of directors at the symphony asked me if I would be interested in becoming a director. And I didn't know what board members did. I asked her, I said, "What do I do?" And she says, "Well, your main job is to help the symphony raise money." And when I got on there, I was asked what kind of committee would I would like to get involved in, and I thought community engagement would be a natural fit for me. Fast forward, the former president of MUSC, Ray Greenberg's wife, worked at the Charleston Symphony, and she was the staff member who facilitated the community engagement committee. And that turned into me helping the symphony take the symphony outside of Charleston. We went to the community center in Ridgeville. We went to Allen Park downtown. We went to Georgetown, I believe, and several other places where we had sponsors that would take us out. So that is really was the impetus of me getting involved with classical music. And the symphony, like many regional organizations back then, had challenges for development activity. And as a result, in 2008, 2009, that was a very turbulent time for the CSO and many other regional orchestras around, where they did a restructuring of how the symphony was operating. We went from a 47 core musicians, I think, down to like 16.
Wow.
And I was trying to encourage them at that time to do a February concert in honor of Black History Month. And they had their hands tied just trying to stay afloat. So that happened for 2 years where it wasn't able to come to fruition. And as a result, I conceived Color of Music at the Starbucks in South Windermere Shopping Center. That's literally where it was. I can remember the evening working with a graphic designer at the Starbucks. And I didn't really know the scale of it, but I knew I had Spoleto Festival as a template and how that operated. And because I paid a lot of attention to how things, happened, on the stage prior to and, getting music, et cetera, and dealing with conductors, it wasn't a stretch for me to execute what I had conceived,
Mhm.
but I had no idea it was going to be so hard. I will say that I was thinner when I first started because I was working 16, 18-hour days, literally doing everything that now I have some great colleagues to help me do it. But that is a little bit of my background, and I spent 25 years in corporate financial services while doing arts administration as an avocation. So I was still working full time and doing the festival, working out of White Plains, New York, actually at the time, and telecommuting. And when the festival debuted, the first time I came out to introduce a concert at the old Meminger, now referred to as Festival Hall on Bouthane Street, I knew the idea was bigger than me.
Mm.
And we haven't looked back. It has not been easy for your listeners to do this. If you can imagine, there's 1,700, I call them white orchestras, and there's three organizations in North America that has a focus on the African diaspora.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so there's a League of American Orchestras that are kind of the standard bearer for and advocates for. I think Congress gives them financial support to be that advocate because, as most of us know, July 4th, we celebrate our independence. But because the Crown, we told the Crown we didn't want anything to do with them, they said, well, you have to build your own institutions.
Mhm.
So the classical arts, ballet festivals, and operas, those are things in the US we have to find donated money
Mhm.
to make it happen. And most of the general public don't understand that that's how we operate. We operate from donated funds. And, we can get grants, federal grants, state grants, county grants, and city grants, but that's a fraction of the total, what we call IRS 990 reporting of an organization like that. So I hope that's as concise as I can get to my background on question number one.
Yeah, no, that's a great overview. And hearing you talk, Lee, it actually makes me think of a classic definition I've heard in the church for vocation. That one's vocation, one's calling in life is where your deep joy meets the world's deep hunger or deep need. And hearing you talk about your upbringing and the experiences that you had, it really kind of felt to me like God was preparing you to be the founder and director of this wonderful festival and to offer this to our community and to communities beyond. Can you just tell me how long the festival has now been going? What year did you debut? And how have you seen the festival evolve over time?
The festival was conceived in 2012. In fact, I was rotating off of the Charleston Symphony Board as an ex officio member because when I helped them to start the CSO Gospel Choir, they asked me to stay on the board and just be like an advisor. So we were still having Gospel Christmas and an MLK concert. The late David Stahl was music director at the time, who was a great supporter of diversity and inclusion. That's a word that has become toxic in our country. But the reality of it is, we are diversity and we are inclusion. And the festival has evolved from being a purely domiciled and only performing here in Charleston
Mhm.
to me finding that the development efforts were so challenging because the legacy organizations like the Symphony and Spoleto and Seaweed sucked up all the development dollars. So donors really didn't understand the model and for some people they thought I was self-segregating, not understanding that out of that 1,700 orchestras in North America, we represent less than 2% of the musicians who take an orchestral stage or play in a pit of a opera house or ballet. And so the deficit is just as you know, drastic as what you see in tennis and golf.
Mhm.
But we know that those activities all have a direct connection to access. And if someone has access to get on a golf course and they have private tutoring, from the age of 5, like Tiger Woods and Venus and Serena,
Mhm.
then you can become these superstars because you go into it without handicaps. A young black kid or Latino kid or Native American kid who may just stumbled upon that activity, extracurricular activity in school. So they're in their teens and they may have a natural affinity and talent to play an instrument or play a piano, but they go into it with habits that when it comes to competing to get the coveted spots that are on the American orchestral stage,
Mhm.
you're competing against folks who have mastered the technique because they've had private instructions or they've had a tutor from everything on how to audition to what type of repertoire you should have in your fingers or et cetera. So we had to kind of self-engineer, re-engineer ourselves. And I say uh, having a lack of funding here and going to Carnegie Mellon University, which was my first sending the festival outside of Charleston. We had a 4-year residency with them, and it all evolved from a chance introduction at Charleston Place with Dr. Etta Fields Black, who just won a Pulitzer for her Combahee River raid on Harriet Tubman. And she's a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. In fact, Etta wrote a libretto for a composition called A Requiem for Rice, Unmourned, Unburied, and Unmarked. And it chronicles the many Africans that died during the Atlantic slave trade that had no memorial. There's no marker that says, 10,000 died on this passage. And when they got here, there was no one to mourn them. And we debuted that piece at Carnegie Music Hall at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And we've since performed it in Houston, Nashville, the University of South Carolina Coger Center, and we will premiere it here on the 28th of February at the North Charleston Performing Arts Center. So to answer the question, how has it evolved? It has organically evolved the way God intended for it. It was never supposed to be only here in Charleston. I thought that that was what it was supposed to be, but the model was supposed to literally evolve where we would go as far west as Sacramento, California. We did a 3-year residency out there. We've done Carnegie Hall, we've done Washington, D.C. and Georgetown, University of Richmond. And we're going to debut in March in Milwaukee. And I'm working on Furman University to do a residency up in the Greenville, Spartanburg area. So I am a believer, and there have been many days where I've had to literally give up the impediment in front of me to God because there was no other way for me to get through it. And I think because I have a tight, talented group of colleagues that work very closely with me to make this festival happen. They're all so committed. We execute, I say we punch higher than our weight,
Hmm.
but the professionalism that they bring to the table and the passion for what we're doing to inspire young children to see themselves in a space that they rarely see um, is what gives me the energy, along with a lot of prayer. And I'm talking prayer throughout the day, driving my car from Starbucks, you know, when things literally come showering down that I did not expect. And I'm just going to give you an example of that for your audience. Mayor Reggie Burgess has been very supportive, and he met with me back. He was 6 months into his term, his first term as mayor, and through a community leader named Carolyn LeCue, um, I had a private meeting with him, and I explained to him the legacy of how Joe Riley was the impetus for Spoleto, literally changing the economic status, the airport, the culinary world that we enjoy and people come into. They don't realize that Spoleto Festival USA literally was responsible for that. And I know Mina, the CEO that replaced Nigel Redding, and he's able to come in and give it his own touch. But folks who know Charleston as this now number one destination place, or they have bought a second home here, and we have wonderful boutique hotels, they don't know that there was one festival that changed the entire region. And we have to give them the credit where the credit is due, along with the Southeastern Wildlife Expo and our Visitors Bureau. A woman by the name of Helen Hill runs the Visitors Bureau, and Helen has digged very deep to make sure that those of us of African ancestry, the history and the culture is a part of attracting people to what makes Charleston very unique. And now we have the International African American Museum chronicling how 48% of all Africans that came into North America literally disembarked right there at I guess
Gadsden's
it's
Wharf. Yeah.
Gaston's Wharf. Yeah. So anyway, that's how it's evolved. I hope that's a good
Yeah,
explanation.
no, it's inspiring to hear of its reach. And you talk about the mission of the festival, and I wonder, given that it's been going now since 2012,
13 years. Yeah.
you have some success stories about young people impacted by the festival or young musicians that have gone on to other things.
Absolutely. And last year we sold out our first 2 o'clock matinee piano recital with a young, talented guy by the name of Caden Kelly. He's from Arizona. He's at UCLA's conservatory up there in LA. And we had so many young people. I'm assuming the parents took them out of school because 2 o'clock, they should be getting on a bus or just about to get on a bus or being picked up, in the carpool line. And I was in awe looking at the children in the audience and how captivated they were. And as you know, with children, children can dream when they can see something
Hmm.
because they have a reference.
Absolutely.
And every time we take the stage, be it presenting an organ recital, which is very important to the festival, it was in many cases the only classical instrument. And you have an organ, a pipe organ in your sanctuary. It was for the Black community, it was the only classical instrument in the church. They didn't have the wherewithal to have strings and put on big cantatas and so forth. But the organist could at least replicate the sounds with the various stops
Mhm.
that an organ has. So we have a organ recital on Saturday at noon, and I'm hoping that your congregation and Calvary and of course St.
Mark.
Mark's,
Yeah.
yeah, will come out and support Dr. Anthony Williams at First Scots Presbyterian. And Dr. Williams actually was one of the first organists, along with, because he was at Fisk University in Nashville when the festival started, along with Dr. Joyce Finch Johnson, who is the organist at Spelman. She's emerita professor at Spelman College in Atlanta. And so um, this is one of those things that I say, if we can inspire one
Mhm.
child from an underserved community to be interested in the organ or interested in the violin or the cello, all the studies have shown children who study a self-starting activity as learning music tend to do better in quantitative subjects, comprehension. It's I call it it's logic for those of us who took logic to get a business degree. There are all these things, forecasting, that you learn in music, algebra, subdividing. There's a multitude of things when you learn basic music that helps a child apply themselves differently when it comes to academics, let alone if you are a singer, as I am, you have a friend anywhere in the world, particularly if you're a tenor, because God didn't make many of us. He made a lot of basses and baritones, but first tenors, oh my goodness, any choir director can find a first tenor they want to lock to your arms and not let you go.
Mhm. Well, it is so true in my experience that you expose children to the arts, to music. It opens worlds for those
Yeah.
young people, and it just sounds like you've been doing that since day one with this festival. Now, we're recording this, Lee, on a Tuesday, but by the time this comes out, I know this year's festival will have begun. Can you talk a little bit about the different events that are happening this month here in Charleston? I know there is an event happening at St. Mark's. St. Stephen's partners with St.
Yeah.
Mark's and Calvary as the three Episcopal churches with historic roots in the African American church here on the peninsula. Could you talk a little bit about this month's festival?
Well, this month's festival starts out with a wonderful vocal recital. Unfortunately, it's sold out on tomorrow, which would be Wednesday, the 4th, at Murray Center, which is the headquarters for where Spoleto Festival USA operates their international festival out of. And then that evening, we're at the historic Edmiston Alston House. That performance is also sold out, unfortunately. And then on Thursday, we have a piano recital at Murray Center, again at 14 George. That one is sold out too. And Thursday night, we're at the historic Charleston Library Society, which I don't know if your audience understand the significance of the Charleston Library Society. It started in 1748, and the Library Society had several of the signers of the Declaration of Independence as its members. It started with a group of um, intellectually curious men of their time, and it has a direct connection to the founding and formation of our country down to Ben Franklin, who happened to be there at the time when the Declaration was signed here in the United States. So, for those who have not been keeping up with the SC 250, you should read up on it. South Carolina played a major part in that. And those of us of African ancestry, we were the anchors of that experiment. It wouldn't be able to flourish and become the country that we are today had it not been for those who were imported here as African enslaved people. And then on Friday, we have a evening at Murray Center, where we're going to be featuring chamber as well as a woodwind ensemble. This will be a feature that we've done only one time before. And some of the gems will be Samuel Barber's Dover with the vocalist, the baritone who's from San Diego, Andre Simmons, Mr. Eddie Sanders the third, who's from Washington, D.C., retired bassoon player in the U.S. Air Force. He's a retired Air Force officer. We'll be leading that. And we have Mendelssohn's Octet, which the last time we performed it was at the Dock Street Theater for the Moja festival. We're going to be presenting that along with some just beautiful works by Mozart. And because, you know, we're acknowledging and commemorating the sesquicentennial of the country's declaration, we will also do a nod to Joseph Boulogne, who was also known as Chevalier de Saint-Georges. And he was a complete Renaissance man who was born enslaved to an African woman in Guadeloupe in a sugarcane plantation. But for some reason, the white enslaver gave Chevalier an education that would have been equivalent to what Madison and Thomas Jefferson. So he got a classical education and became an amazing fencer. In fact, beating the number one fencer at the time in all of Europe. But what differentiates him from others of that period is he became a virtuosic violinist and composer, and he composed six operas. We performed one of them in a concert version in its entirety in 2016 at the Gilliard Center. But I have a musician who was born in Guadeloupe but lives in Paris by the name of Romiel Guembert Bar, who will be featured on two of Chevalier's pieces, including a quartet by him and a double violin piece that will be a feature. And of course, as I said, on the 28th of February, we will be at the North Charleston Performing Arts Center. We'll be doing Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto. Ramiel will be doing that. And we will premiere the Requiem for Rice, the libretto written by, as I said, the Pulitzer Prize winning author, Etta Fields Black, who's at Carnegie Mellon University.
Well, and for the events where you can still purchase tickets, how can folks do that and learn more information about the festival?
They can go to Color, that's the European spelling of color, Colour, not the way we spell it here in America. There's a U in it. So they could go to Color of Music altogether.org, and the complete schedule is listed there. There are tickets available Thursday at the Library Society, and there are tickets still available Friday. And there's tickets available at St. Mark's, where we're going to do the finale. And I'm hoping your congregation, along with Calvary, will come and be a part of that as well.
Sounds good. Terrific. Well, Lee, I really appreciate you taking the time in the midst of a busy week for you. But thank you so very much for all of your many contributions to our community through the Color of Music Festival and beyond. For those listening in, please do check out the website and order your tickets. And for those St. Stephenites, let's definitely try to be there at St. Mark's for the finale on Saturday. I'll be back next month for another edition of Rector's Corner. In the meantime, friends, you stay safe and well, and you keep the faith. Take care, everybody.